The real estate world, in my observation, is sort of run by Trumpian figures. And what I mean by that is art of the deal. Buy low, sell high. It's very much the money is made in the transaction, not in the operations. And whereas operations is sort of what I call the nerd table in high school.
Welcome to Deal Flow with me, 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐿, the go-to destination for private equity and real estate professionals, including institutional investors, sponsors, and market experts. Each week, I talk with industry insiders on everything real estate, capital, and Proptech. Today, we're delighted to welcome Peter Gudmundsson, CEO of 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7, with a rich background in leadership across various sectors. Peter now spearheads 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7, a pioneering firm in the property management solutions space, integrating smart technology. Under his guidance, 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7 has transformed how residential and hospitality leasing operations are managed, enhancing efficiency through innovative cloud-based platforms. Peter, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about this conversation with you to talk about technology and how you're transforming the property management space with technology. Before we get into that, though, I'd love for you to just give me a quick background on yourself and kind of your career and whatnot up to today. I know I gave you an intro, but I always prefer to hear it directly.
Yeah, well, despite the accent that you'll hear from me, I came to the U.S. when I was 4 years old. I'm a first-generation immigrant, but as a child from Iceland, and grew up in suburban New York. And I've spent most of my career in small to medium-sized businesses, following what I call a buy, grow, sell strategy. Generally buying something, not always, but sometimes I get hired by boards, but usually invest in a company, grow it to a certain point, and then sell it. And that's what I've done most of the time. Most recently in this property technology space, which is so interesting these days, with 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7. But that's the sort of the common theme. I live in Dallas, Texas, been here since 1996. Although, like I said, I grew up in suburban New York. So that's the broad highlight, and sure we can drill down from there.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. So, I love to let's dive into the current stuff. Maybe tell me a little bit about 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7, kind of how you got involved in that and what you guys are working on.
So 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7 was actually founded in 2007 by our chief technology officer, a guy named Joseph Morris out of Destin, Florida. And it was largely sort of a hobby business for a few years. He's a very skilled technologist, and he was helping people out. Being in the Florida Panhandle, he was helping people out with vacation rental technology. And from there, fast forward to about 2019, he decided to get sort of serious about the business beyond being sort of a hobby. And he took an investment from a family office out of Midland, Texas called the Mariah Group. My pretty stupid joke is that one of the conditions of the Mariah Group was that the company would hire a quote unquote real CEO, and they couldn't find one. So here I am, but I'm bum. That's my stupid joke. It's like a dad joke. I keep reusing it. But basically, so that's how I came into the company at the beginning of 2021. So the company, again, called 𝐵𝐻𝐿 24/7, and what we offer is what's called a unified or a tailored operations platform. Now, those of you, I'm sure a lot of listeners follow the real estate space by definition, and everyone knows what a property management system or a PMS is. And those are really accounting systems. And whether it be the vacation rental, short-term space, or the long-term residential space, meaning single family, multifamily, and all the other subcategories like student and senior and so on, those categories, everyone needs an accounting system. And so whether it be in the residential space, Yardi, RealPage, AppFolio, Entrata, people all know names like that. In the vacation space, it's names like Guesty and Streamline and Barefoot. It's very, very fragmented. There are like 50 different property management systems. Anyway, those are accounting systems. They're really about keeping score in the business. What 𝐵𝐻𝐿 does is the operations side of real estate. So specifically, think about the things that happen in the physical world tied to the business operations. So in particular, it is the mastery or the control of smart devices. So smart locks, smart thermostat, noise detectors, leak detectors, motion detectors, really almost any sort of smart device that's connected wirelessly to a controller hub that we provide. And then taking those devices and integrating them with operating workflows. So in the vacation world, that means checking guests in and out, managing housekeeping, maintenance management, vendor management, energy management, that sort of thing. And in the residential world, it is listing syndication, like getting the listing out to apartments.com or Zillow or Zumper, or those types of sites. And then it's managing the whole self-guided tour process. So self-guided tours, digital leasing, all those things. And then similar maintenance management, vendor management, energy management, and all these things being working together. So for example, when you take a self-guided tour, if you have an unoccupied house, let's say that you're renting out or want to rent out, you would, the temperature could be kept at an economical level. Let's say it's the summer in Texas, and you can keep your air conditioner at 85 degrees. And then half an hour before the tour begins, automatically the temperature would be brought up to or brought down to a comfortable level. And then you would conduct the tour, and then the prospective renter could actually rent the place without even dealing with a human. Just right on their phone, say, I like this place, I want to rent it, submit their application right on their phone, and ideally get approved and move in happily. So anyway, I did that rapid fire, but that's really what we do. It's the operations side of things. It's not an operating system, because that's like iOS or Windows, but it's an operations system that allows people to run the business. So at an enterprise scale, I should mention. So if people have, let's say you manage 500 houses, it's very hard to send a guy around in a pickup truck to do all those things. But with one dashboard, you can know what's happening in each of your houses. What's the temperature? What's the access control? What's the status of maintenance requests? And so on, all in one place.
If you're enjoying the insights and expert discussions on deal flow with myself, Michael Pulio, hit that follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date on the latest in private equity, commercial real estate, and structured finance, and you'll never miss an episode. Plus, if you find our content valuable, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please leave us a review so we can continue bringing you insider conversations with market experts. Thanks for tuning in. I got a lot of questions.
I went fast. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I used to work on the sell side, and all I do was to hear people tell me about their businesses, and I would take notes, and I would ask them questions until they screamed at me. So I guess, digitizing the physical workflows essentially of various assets within real estate. Could you talked about a lot of different types of product, and then potentially different types of customers, going directly to owners, going to maybe property managers. Can you speak a little bit about maybe do you see your customers as property management firms, or do you see them as individuals?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is, I'll phrase it this way: people who manage properties, which includes property managers, third-party property managers, especially in the vacation space, but also in the residential side, but also owner-operators, people who do their own management, but all at scale. So typically we don't have customers that have fewer than, say, 25 units, because at a certain point you can manage a business. If you live upstairs and you rent out the downstairs apartment, you can pretty much go down the stairs and do these things with you the old-fashioned way. But if you have scale, which really means enterprise scale, which we define as 25 and up. But some of our clients, like Tricon Residential or Full Partners of America, have tens of thousands of units. And that's where we really shine, is where you're managing, where one is managing a lot of units at scale.
Yeah. And so you're primarily focusing on the B2B space.
Yeah, entirely. Yeah,
it's B2B2C.
Exactly. It's B2B, and then they're B2C, because they're dealing with ultimate vacationers or renters. So, but absolutely. Yeah, we haven't really figured out a way to do it at scale, because, take the SFR space, the single family, only 4 or 5% are corporately owned units. 95% are still onesie, twosie landlords. So if we could figure that out, we'll really be off to the races. But that's maybe a project for 2025 to figure out how to do that at scale.
Yeah. I think to your point, it's probably still through the property managers that represent those mom and pop owners, right? It's difficult to justify. And I think probably part of your how you explain your product requires a person, right? So it's really difficult to make the unit economics work.
And the interesting thing about property managers, and you may have some among your listeners, is that if they're sort of a little bit of an insecure bunch, meaning they know that they're one phone call away from being fired, and so they're sort of reluctant to invest in technology, even if it makes them more efficient and less likely to be fired by the owner. Because of that, they have sort of a short-term view sometimes. The smarter ones are the ones that really operate at larger scale because they're smarter. They understand the importance of technology, and they become our best customers.
Yeah, yeah, and have use, property managers is sort of like a tangent, but property managers don't trade at high multiple. Is it make more sense to just buy them out and get their contracts and then install the technology through a seller note arrangement?
That's interesting, and I shouldn't name names, but it's funny. In both sides of our business, both the vacation and the residential side, there has been consolidation among property managers, and often with a sort of a sprinkling of technology, and they sort of present themselves or hoping to get a technology multiple in the marketplace, and that's been somewhat unsuccessful because the market eventually figures it out. Because property management is a human business. The best property managers have the best humans managing. We would say then leveraged by technology, but technology will not completely replace humans. It just makes them more efficient. And so that's why we don't want to be property managers. We want to be providers of technology to property managers. But the property managers shouldn't, in my opinion, humble opinion, they shouldn't try to convince themselves they are technologists, because most of them have fallen short on that. They spend a lot of money on building stuff in-house that they don't really understand. And then they find themselves, the market still thinks, oh, you're a property manager. And they get that 2x multiple or whatever. And it's a tough business that way.
Yeah, well, the proof is in the P&L, and the margins are just pretty low. You've got a lot of SG&A, you've got a lot of payroll costs, you're not to, I don't want to conflate what you guys are doing to property management. So I want to make sure that that's clear that, you guys are enabling others to use your technology. You're the rails sort of that everything sits on top of and creates that efficiency. So it makes a lot of sense. So customers going, I guess, what type of client or what type of property manager or asset type is most receptive to your product? You had talked about single family, long-term, short-term. Yeah.
Right. I think our best space is single family. And the reason for that is multifold. One is that single family for rent, SFR folks need to conquer distance. Meaning if you have, say, 500 units, even if they're contiguous in one community, it's expensive to send somebody, even in a golf cart, across the community to go check on a temperature or a back door or a maintenance request. So space, and then a scattered site in particular. I mean, you may have, imagine just one particular area, Atlanta or Dallas or Houston, you could be 3 hours to get across town in traffic, all to fix a window. And that's very, very expensive. So that's one. Second reason of SFR is that it's corporately owned. Behind it, you've got big companies like Blackstone, Pretium, Cerberus, and they are run by fancy MBAs who ask other fancy MBAs questions about how are you using technology to reduce cost and increase revenue. And they need to have an answer. Whereas the vacation space and and even multifamily to some degree, although there is some corporate ownership, tends to be a little bit more, I wouldn't say mom and pop, but more of a small business focus. And so if you manage 50 vacation rentals in, some sand dunes beach somewhere, it's very easy for you to convince yourself you could do it yourself. I think that the smarter ones realize they can't, and they leverage technology, but it is tempting. Whereas SFR at scale, there's no way you can do it without technology, and therefore they come looking for us.
Yeah. And I think that I assume that there's that has accelerated. I think as interest expense has gone up and margins have been compressed, they're looking for opportunities to improve the P&L.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, one of the challenges, which is kind of interesting, maybe in my observation, is we're recording this on election day here in the States, and I make a comment. It's not a political comment; it's a psychological one. That the real estate world, in my observation, is sort of run by Trumpian figures, and what I mean by that is art of the deal: buy low, sell high. It's very much the money is made in the transaction, not in the operations. And whereas operations is sort of what I call the nerd table in high school, and so it's run by the jock table, but the nerd table is sort of only consulted when they have to. And that's unfortunate because the nerds have the answers. They know what's going on. We're at the nerd table at a company like ours. And so the details do matter. Margins expand drastically when people use technology intelligently to reduce expenses, which is mostly labor and energy, but also some other things as well. And then actually in the residential space, very often renters are assessed a technology access fee for smart home. And so that the operators can actually make a margin on what they spend on technology with us. So you're making money, saving money, reducing risk, and delivering a better resident experience. It's a win for everybody.
Yeah. And I think when times are not as good and maybe the market is not as frothy, operating performance is actually quite important. When times are really good, no one gives too much care about the P&L, but because, like you said, you buy at a price, you're selling, you're making your cap gains. But when times are tough, like they are today in the commercial space, I do every 3 times a week. My team and I, we look at all the deals that we're looking at, and today we looked at 6 different deals. Every single one of them were offering well below the basis of the prior owner. And the property itself not distressed really, more of a function of just income and expenses.
And then there are metrics in property management that like the turn time, the time that it takes to turn. If technology can really help you speed that up, and that not only makes money obviously with getting more rent in the door faster, but also it reduces risk in terms of like squatter risk. Squatter risk is a big deal these days, and it's another thing that technology can do. Motion detectors and so on. Like why, if 123 Main Street is unoccupied, why are we seeing motion inside the house? And if you can attend to that and eject the bad guys as when they're still trespassers and not yet squatters, because depending on the state, some squatters have surprisingly strong rights, and it can be $30,000-$40,000 to expel a squatter. And who wants that?
Yeah, it sounds like we're talking about California here.
Exactly.
Other states too. I'm from the Northeast, so I'm state, and I've invested in Illinois as well, and so I'm familiar with a lot of these.
Georgia's another one.
Friendly. Yeah, Georgia. Going to the kind of asset onboarding, you talked a lot about the technology that obviously the physical technology that needs to be installed in order for you to actually be able to monitor things. Can you tell us a little bit about how you onboard assets and do you provide that equipment to people,
great question.
Or do they come with it? How does that work?
We see ourselves as a software company, but hardware is sort of the gateway enabling thing. And so we are also device semi-agnostic, which means we don't have our own proprietary hardware. We work with the major lock manufacturers, the major thermostat manufacturers, and so on. And most of them work with our technology. We don't want to, it might be a little bit stickier. Well, hardly anyone ever leaves us anyway, but it might be a little stickier if we had a proprietary lock or proprietary thermostat or leak detectors, these other things. The thing is that most people have some installed base already. So let's say you manage 500 houses. You may find that 300 of them have a Yale lock, 100 of them have a 𝐸𝐫𝐫𝐫 locks, and 100 have, Kwikset or some other manufacturer. And so we can come in and probably work with all of those locks. So we try to use the hardware that already exists, or we will assist the client with obtaining new items. If they're big enough and they have a sophisticated supply chain, they may choose to buy them themselves. Otherwise, we can do the transaction for them. We don't seek to make much, if any, margin on hardware because, like I said, it really is just enabler. We charge by the unit, by the month, and so what we want is subscription revenue, and so that's what we'll do anything ethically we can to get to that subscription revenue. So anyway, to answer your question, so the hardware can either be bought by the client or that we advise, and we're depending on the application and the need, we have opinions on which hardware is best, and if they want to hear those, we'll give them. Sometimes we are overruled, and the client says, no, we want to use this manufacturer, and the customer is always right, and we say yes sir, how high, and we make it work. But that's how we think about hardware.
Sure. And so if someone wanted to come into your platform and they had the necessary scale to do so, and they're ready to move today, how long would it take them to get up and running on your system?
Another great question. It really varies. We've got people up within a week. believe it or not. Usually it's 2 or 3 weeks. It all depends whether they have installation resources or not. So if they have their own in-house like handyman staff, we do a train the trainer model where we train the handy men in a non-gendered way, the handy people to install the hardware and pair it, and have it, make sure it comes up on the system. Other times we use third-party installers, and there are excellent third-party companies that we work with that they can not. We just knocked out, I think it was in North Carolina, we knocked out about 400 units in 2 days. I mean, with our third-party installers, they're really, really good at that. So so that's how it's done, and it really depends what the client prefers. But either way, it can be pretty quick and painless. Sometimes for certain types of locks, there can be. This has largely worked its way out, but a year or two ago, there was some supply chain dislocation still from the COVID years. But most of that has been worked through the system, and it's not hard to get the hardware in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And so you're primarily focused on the SFR space. I'm going to ask you about multifamily in a second, but tell us a little bit about your geographical focus or your footprint today. Where are you guys located? Where do you want to be? Kind of what's your scale today?
Yeah, we're all over in the States and very little bit in Mexico, and that's about it. Every now and then we make an exploratory trip to Europe and wonder why we're not there yet. But they're not quite as evolved in the use of Proptech, and so it's the old question: do we want to be early or do we want to be on time? And we decided not to be early. Plus, the market is so large here in the States. But basically, as you would imagine, if you follow the growth of SFR, just sort of picture that through the Sun Belt, really from the Carolinas through Atlanta, then through the South. Texas, of course, is big. Florida is big, and then all the way to California, Southern California. Less so in the north, but there are exceptions. I mean, on the vacation side, we're in ski towns and we're in places like Cape Cod and so on. But mostly it's Sunbelt, and the vacation tends to skew a little bit more beach than mountain, but we do both. So that's that. So it's where the growth is. I'm like, you don't see a lot of 5,000 houses being built outside of Providence, Rhode Island. It doesn't seem to happen that much these days. But you do see that in Phoenix and Houston, Atlanta, and Dallas, and so on.
Yeah, and are you primarily finding client growth through those new communities, and you're getting your technology installed, when at the vertical construction, or are you
both? So there's the BTR, BTR aspect with long-term planning, and there's the people assembling portfolios already. So our growth comes from a number of ways. One is our own clients are acquisitive, both through construction and acquisition. Like I said, some of our larger clients are Home Partners of America, Tricon Residential, Evergreen Residential, companies like that, Home Source, and they are both building and buying, and we grow with that. Even on the vacation side, one of our larger clients is V-Trips, and they've also been acquiring other property management companies, and we grow with them. So that's primary. The second is selling ourselves directly into people that don't use us yet, or they use a competitor or a quasi-competitor. And one thing we've learned is very, very long lead times. It takes a long, long time, even for existing communities. I joke that it's a little bit like fitness resolutions. Yeah. I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to get in shape next month. So it's not the same thing as the alarm going off at 5 a.m. and starting the workout today. So, but anyway, so long lead times, very high level sale. We sell at the CEO level. It's a lot of networking. It's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of referral. Because as you know, in PropTech, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of startups, and we've positioned ourselves very much as sort of a company run by adults for other adults, as opposed to a bunch of Silicon Valley kids all excited about disintermediating the disintermediation and that sort of thing. Where we're really more about practical solutions.
Sure. Let's go to the multifamily. So you had said that your technology primarily is effective, or most advantageous in the single family space, perhaps. But have you had a lot of installs in the multifamily sector?
We have. We do multifamily as well. We have an internal, our president, Lena Maldonado, and I have this very, very funny, or we think it's funny, professional debate that he says that I'm anti-multifamily, and I say, well, you're pro-multifamily. The truth is we're both pro-multifamily. It's just that multifamily is a little bit harder sell only because one, culturally, to grossly generalize, is a little bit more conservative of a space. Like I said, it can be a little more family-owned, family-operated. Of course, there are large corporate presence as well, but they tend to be, metal keys work for my grandfather and metal keys work fine. I'll just keep paying locksmiths to rekey every time there's a turn. There's a little bit of that conservativeness. That's why I tend to be a little skeptical of the multifamily. That said, the multifamily market is huge, and especially where you start getting scale, either with high-rise or garden-style apartments, the more the scale you need, the more space and distance comes into play, and the more they need folks like us. We're also seeing traction, actually just in the last couple of months, in particular in student housing and a little bit of senior housing. But student housing is surprising. You would think on the surface, if you didn't know anything about Proptech or real estate, you would think student housing would be the most cutting edge on technology because it's young people. It's not. They're actually surprising. They're surprisingly primitive, and I think the mentality is, we're all one of the appealing aspects of student housing is you only have a turn once a year, typically, and then they usually lease up 100%. So they've gotten a little bit, I think, complacent with what technology can do for them. But I think they're starting to wake up a little bit, and I think we're going to see a good growth on the student side of multifamily as well.
Yeah. Well, I think as these buildings become more and more expensive and the competitiveness of the leasing and continues to develop, they're going to have to, cut costs and figure out, again, where is that efficiency gain going to come from? How do I drop my, when people leave for the holidays, why am I keeping my heat on, right? When I could drop it, right? There's so many energy savings, I think, on student housing because you're only occupied 8 out of 12 months.
Exactly.
12 months rent.
I went to college in the Northeast, and I remember. Of course, it was like 1,000 years ago, and they had these big boilers in the basement somewhere. But you left the windows open, and went home for Christmas break with the windows open. It was crazy.
Yeah. Did you? I went to school in Boston. Whereabouts in the Northeast?
So Providence. I went to Brown undergrad and business school at Harvard. I saw you were at BU at business school. I think was that Brad?
Yeah.
I lived in Brookline when we were at when I was.
I lived in Allston, a little bit of a not as nice of a place as Brookline, but
Allston's come along since my day though. It's nicer now. Yeah. I was in Brookline, just a few blocks away from. Well, BU, of course, is so long, but not far from Com Ave. And then I had a son at Boston College. My wife was at Boston College Law School when I was at Harvard Business School. So we were all over Boston. But great times.
Yeah, no, my wife and I met in Boston as well. She was going to get her master's in occupational therapy, and I was finishing up in finance, and then moved down back. We're from New Jersey originally. So she's from Princeton. I'm from a little town in North Jersey. She's called Short Hills, which is just outside of Manhattan.
More than a little town. It has a mall. How little can it be?
There you go. If you know anything about North, you know about the Short Hills Mall.
Not just a mall, but a mall.
It is. I remember, not that this is like related at all, but I would, get on my bike. I could get from my house to the mall on my bike, go to Mrs. Fields Cookies, get myself a nice cookie, and back then you could, there was no cell phones, right? And so, I would just leave the house and I would come back when I got back and, I don't know what my parents were thinking, just letting me, go to random places, but I made it. So we all made
Norman Rockwell's dream meets the commerce of the 90s or whatever.
Yes, exactly. So you talked about labor and energy costs being the real drivers of the improvement. Could you maybe speak to maybe any specifics there around what you see when you maybe in a single family space, the type of reduction in expenses or just the benefits from a tangible perspective that clients are seeing?
Yeah, it really varies. And people often ask us, can you quantify? And yes, if we get deep into your numbers, but it depends how you run your business in many ways. But take energy, for example. We have found that SFR clients will save at least 50% of the energy of unoccupied units. And if 10% of their units at any given time are unoccupied, that's a big savings. And that's just to the energy they're paying because there's nobody there by definition. There's no resident. So the the landlord, the owner, is paying for that energy. So that's one example. The other is actually, it may not be directly, but it's still a green and good thing to do, which is to assist your residents in saving their money. And so we don't use the Nest brand, but a lot of people know what Nest thermostats are these days. We tend to use a lot of Honeywell and some other brands, but residents love the idea of leaving for a vacation and then I forgot to turn the air conditioner up while I'm gone. And they could do that from the airport on their phones, with our technology. And that sort of thing saves money, not for the ultimate owner, but for the resident, which makes for a happier resident. So that's an example on the energy side. And then labor, it's really the efficiency of maintenance requests, for example, that are managed. So again, what our system does, the tailored operations platform, one way to think about it is it's kind of like Microsoft Office. It does a lot of functions that previously were done by individual point solutions. So, and they're all integrated, just like Microsoft Office is. So it's very easy to import a spreadsheet into PowerPoint from Excel. Likewise with us, it's all integrated. And so, yeah, so the efficiency on labor is really helping you prioritize. For example, we use artificial intelligence to prioritize inquiries, maintenance requests as they come in. So if someone says the word flood, it goes to the top of the list, or leaks or other things. Whereas, screen door broken might be a notch or two lower in terms of priority. We help the resident do that. We help the resident prioritize, and then the property manager make choices around that, which makes for better labor efficiency. But we have found that it varies, but I mean, it could be as much as I'd say as a 30 to 50% headcount savings. But we don't think of it as firing people. That's not really what it should be. It should really be getting your people working on where they can be most effective and have the biggest impact on asset protection and resident experience.
Yeah. No, I'm being in the multifamily space, I've been, the rule is always, one person inside, one person outside for every, 50 units or something like that, right? And that's been the standard since you were doing paper leases and there were no computers and there were checks being delivered and money orders and all this different stuff. And now we have all this technology and the standard has not yet really changed.
And it really it really should and could get much better than that. I mean, I'd be hesitant without knowing all the details of an operation to give a number, but I would say, 50% improvement to that intuitively, easily. You just have to get past the that conservative thinking that I mentioned, the traditional thinking.
Yes, and there's a little bit of a principal agent problem with property managers. They would rather you have more staff because as the owner, you're paying for the staff. So it's really no skin off their back. And more staff is, more staff from their perspective, right? They're bigger than, and they're more, it's like the government, right? Bigger.
Exactly.
And so, but yeah, I definitely see there's also a huge customer experience benefit to having more and more technology, and they can see what's going on in their unit, right? Beyond what you're able to do as a manager of that unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It saves a phone call or two or a trip to the front office. If you can just look online and go, oh, part on order, expected to be fixed tomorrow. You're like, oh, okay. I'm okay with that. As long as it's not a gushing flood, you're probably okay with that. And then likewise, it is interesting you talking about generational difference earlier, that a lot of people in general, but younger people in particular, tend to not want to deal with. They don't want to deal with a human at the front desk. They want to deal with an app or deal with the digital information flow rather than have to go face to face.
Yeah. So another thing on maintenance and just operations, part of what is somewhat of a challenge, I think, is assessing the status of all your physical assets, right? So your HVAC units, your roofs, your things like that. Are you integrating back into those accounting platforms to do a inventory and a preventive maintenance type?
We integrate with, I think it's 50 or 55 different PMS services. And really anywhere where there's a data inflow of information, we can tie that back through our APIs. And so now integrations is one of those words, a word of advice to potential clients is integrations can mean a lot of things. And so the devil's in the details, but basically, it is but we can definitely do that, and almost anything there that there's a monitor for, we can get that data back back in. And that's another potential. As we grow, we expect there'll be more and more data applications where people want to make predictive maintenance decisions and so on based on that data. You really need to get to some critical mass first. And we do have clients with tens of thousands of units with us, as I mentioned, but as some of these clients get even bigger with, 50 or 100,000 units, I think there'll be really some interesting benefits from data aggregation and analysis.
Yeah, I mean, if you when you're even thinking about annual budgeting and you're thinking about, okay, well, across my platform, how many of my how many early failures of HVAC am I going to have this year? How many, end of life failures? What should my repairs be expected based on the average age of all my HVACs? And that's just one category relative to 7 or 8.
Even something as simple as replacing the batteries in a lock. We have predictive feedback that goes right to the resident. Hey, by the way, you're at 20% on your locks. We recommend you change the batteries now, and that saves a trip. For a maintenance professional, which might cost you, who knows, for an hour, which the resident can take care of themselves with a stop at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, and I think probably people don't realize is, well, I guess obviously with the larger operators, these people are largely on staff, so you're not getting hit as hard. But for the scattered site portfolios for small operators, these people aren't necessarily on payroll. They're calling these people out with a minimum charge to change batteries at $200.
Exactly, which actually that seems more expensive and probably is more expensive, but at least it's visible. Whereas there's sort of a fixed cost fallacy where people think, well, he's on salary anyway. Yeah, but if he's doing that, he's not doing something else. And so people don't always understand the sort of the microeconomics of labor allocation. And that it sounds awfully fancy, but I really do think that if you know what your people, if they're doing, are they doing the highest reward task or something smaller? And that's again where technology like ours can really, really help.
Right. And then you had said earlier, you can cycle through more and more work orders per day. So they can get more labor, the efficiency of the labor is higher, and then you can optimize what they're working on so that they're working on the highest priority items that, make the residents happy, the guests happy, whatever. So makes a lot of sense. So we're getting a little bit close to the end here. I love it if you could tell us kind of where do you guys see, you've been in the seat for about 3 years now.
Yep.
Where do you guys see yourselves, as we move to the rest of the 2020s? What's the vision?
Yeah, I kind of make a reference to Carl Sagan's astronomy, billions and billions. That's where I see us going. Now, we'll continue to grow. We grew at about 65% this past year. We anticipate a similar year in 2025. It's the way we think about our growth is I use a football analogy, which is really scary because I never played football, but there's the ground game, meaning 3 yards in a cloud of dust, is the vacation rental side of the business. It's 50 units here, 100 units there, and that we just do that like a metronome, just very, very to mix metaphors. And then our passing game is the SFR and the large corporate multifamily, and that's where it takes a long time to close these deals, but we're in final conversations with almost all of the major SFR companies. And if we can land, one of those per year, they come in with 50,000 units. I mean, it's now, to be fair, it does take 2 to 4 years to roll out all those units because you generally install the hardware at the turn. They're they can be complex projects, but that's where we see ourselves growing more and more in that space. And that's what we'll keep doing.
Yeah, and do you find that those decisions are typically made around these months where budgets are being drafted for the following year, or when's the decision process usually occur?
I think it's less calendar and more politically driven. What I mean by that is typically when there's a new CEO or a new SVP of ops, that's typically where we see this point of resolution that, my mandate, what my administration is going to do is finally take the step that we've known for years we need to take, but we're actually going to do it based on that. So when I see politics, I don't mean like backstabbing, backroom politics. I mean, they're looking for impact, and technology is one of the best ways you could do it. Everybody says it's people and culture, and that's true. But people and culture are very hard to move. Those are super tankers or aircraft carriers in terms of changing direction. Whereas technology, you can change pretty quickly, both practically and symbolically. So I think it's the ebb and flow of leadership really that drives these sorts of decisions more than the annual budget, because the annual budgets, frankly, they can find the money if they want to. And in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that expensive. And of course, I'm going to say that, but it really is true. People, it's just, it's kind of like I said, exercise or weight loss. It's like, believe it or not, eating and exercise makes a difference. And you know that's true. You could deny it if you want to, but it's true. So the question is, are you going to get started today or put it off till January? I mean, that's really the trade-off, and it's the same way with us.
Sure. And I know that there's probably, my last question here, I know that there's probably different pricing and it's all enterprise, so everything's custom to the unit level, but kind of, is there a broad strokes if someone wanted to install something like this, what do they think? What are they looking at?
Your question had part of the answer in it, that it very much varies on volume and degree of customization and so on. But rule of thumb, it's somewhere around $20 to $25 per unit per month. And so, again, if you have 500 houses times roughly $25, that's what it's going to cost you per month. And then typically we're seeing a lot of, like on the SFR side, they'll charge a $30 to $35 fee to the resident, for technology access. So they're making a margin right there. And then hardware tends to be somewhere around $600. Depends on the which sort of lock you choose and this and that. But something, again, rule of thumb. And again, it also depends on what you have. Like very often people have, these days, the difference between a dumb thermostat and a smart thermostat are very small. Even locks, if you figure in an old-fashioned metal key versus the locksmithing charges of 2 turns, you should have just gotten a smart lock, that sort of thing. So that's basically the rule of thumb on pricing. But as I used the phrase earlier, devil's in the details, and we're happy to talk to anybody about that.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty affordable to me compared to not just the fact that you could pass a lot of the cost off to your resident, and it's an improvement to the resident's perspective, right? It's not just another cost you're passing on, but you're also improving your operating expenses outside of that, right? So your resident's paying for it, getting a benefit, and you're getting the expense savings and the monitoring and just all the preventative stuff that's going to come as time goes on too.
Exactly. Save money, make money, reduce risk, and deliver a better resident experience. That's the one floor elevator pitch right there.
There you go. Well, then I'm gonna leave it on that because I don't think you could say it any better. So, Peter, thank you so much for your time and for sharing some great insights and knowledge within the real estate technology space. If listeners wanted to get in touch with you, find out more about the business, how would they get in touch with you?
Personally, I could be found on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest. And then for our company, it's 𝐵ehome, HOME 247.com. 𝐵ehome247.com is the URL. So come find 𝐵ehome 24/7 there.
Excellent. Well, I think I'm going to have to talk to my partner and get in touch with you guys about our portfolio, because we're always looking for places to install technology and better monitor our assets. So I think this is a great solution. So great. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Deal Flow with me, Michael Pulio. Don't forget to give this podcast a follow on Apple Music and Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. And of course, if you feel like someone else will get something out of this show, please feel free to send it across to them. Feel free to comment below with regards to featured guests you'd like to see, or get in touch should you think that your knowledge and expertise would make for a great episode. Thanks again from me, and I'll see you next time on Deal Flow. Thank you for listening to Deal Flow with me, Michael Pulio. We hope you gained valuable insights into private equity real estate and market trends. Stay tuned for more expert discussions and updates on the latest in commercial real estate and structured finance. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting platform. Join us next time for more high-level conversations that empower your investment decisions and your operating results.